asked me to chair the meeting, so we'll now call the Planning and Zoning Board meeting for Wednesday, February 19th at 1 p.m. in order. And Patty, would you call the roll, please?
Brenda Boynicero.
Here.
Thomas Boynicero.
Here.
Rudy Davis.
Here.
And J.C. Infeld was unable to attend, and Thomas Draskovic is not present.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions on last January 15th meeting minutes? Do I have a motion to approve those?
Yes.
Second?
Yes.
So moved. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Meetings are approved. This meeting is to review our charter, which is to look at all the land, city-owned land in Bel Air Beach, and look for potential revenue generation uses. We've had 2 meetings where we kind of identified the properties and any constraints each of them may have. And now this meeting is, we were to last 30 days, go back and review it. As Glenn said, think out of the box, come up with any uses that might generate additional revenue or cost savings or et cetera. So we'll start, I'll ask each of you to present any views or thoughts you have. I have some myself, and then if anyone else will just hold your questions until we finish presenting what we have, then you can come back with questions or comments, but I'd like to get this all out. Tom, you got something?
Yeah, I think Brent and I have 2 things that we would probably want to bring up. I'll just bring up one, and I think it's something that you brought up, but I want a second opinion on that. There's a lot of small lots that could not be used for much. I think some of them are used sort of like parks, but nobody does much but just walk their dogs in there. And there's a lot of areas in which, or some, in which the neighboring homes could expand their property into those properties, would raise the value of the property, income from selling the land or whatever, and it may be a better utilization than some of them. Now, some of them are nice parks, and I think they should stay that way, but some, I believe, as you brought up, could be sold. I'm sure that a lot of these neighbors have been asked that question, or maybe have thought about it, but that's a thought that I think should be pursued or put to bed, one or the other.
Okay.
And then the other thing that I thought about, and this is not going to be a very popular, it won't win the popular vote, that's for sure. But if we're trying to save money, and we look at this as an asset, rent this whole building out. Move everybody that's in here over to the little house on Cedar Street. Fix that up, put some offices in there. Maybe for a period, we have to buckle our belt buckle a little tighter, maybe for 5 years until we get this thing paid off. And then the lease goes away. Just thinking creatively
I might
how to use.
add to that, that leave the meeting room over there as a meeting party room or whatever, something that the city could use for their meetings. You've got a
Right.
little kitchen there, weddings and anything else, but then the office space, people that are in those offices are not gonna like it, but you could get probably better utilization out of the property that you had if you did that turnabout.
And maybe have a lease just for 5 years, it's not forever. I don't wanna see the city sell anything, I don't wanna sell boat slips, I don't wanna have, let's think about what we've already got right here that we could use just for a short time until we kind of clean up the financials a little bit and get a little bit more stronger
Okay.
in that area.
All right.
That's it.
All right. Okay. All noted, and I'll go and do what I have to present, then we can get into additional conversation. I went back and looked at the small parks again myself. I had recently seen a business article on storage units, and so I went to, let me hand these out to everybody. Pass that around.
Thank you.
What I did is take each of those parks, and on the top spreadsheet, it is all the numbers. But let's turn over to the next page just to start off. And this is First Street. As Tom noted, they're primarily used either for people walking their dogs, and that's, they come by and leave their dogs and they walk on, or people come and sit down by the water, enjoy the water view. So what I did was take, if you look at this, the black line around the perimeter is the actual dimensions of the property. The yellow or orange area is the 30-foot setback on the case of First Street that's on the water. And then the purple block at the front by the street is the 25-foot setback that's for the front of the property. And then here, each side has a 7-foot setback. The red border in the middle is that area that's within all of the setbacks. The walkway down the middle covers an outlet canal and can't be used. So what it left me was areas on both sides of the walk in which you could start with, because I was looking for a way to enhance the use of the property, not just take away from it. The blue area is what I'm calling a paddlecraft storage center. Kayaks, canoes, paddle boards, anything that's human powered. Could be, these two front units could be used as, put racks in them and store kayaks, paddle boards, etc. for people. They could rent the space for $50 a month, and that gives them access to when to rent it. Now this is primarily designed for the 2/3 of people who do not live on the water. The condos, all the little streets that are not water access streets, those people have no access to utilization for kayaks and paddle boards, etc. And I know it's a very popular sport, and I know there are people that would like to do that. In this case also, the brown area at the tip is a floating dock. One of the problems with getting to the water over a seawall is having to go down a ladder with your paddleboard or your kayak. This would let you walk down a ramp to the floating docks, set your paddle craft in the water, and go off. I'm sure they would pay $50 a month to be able to store their kayaks or whatever and have easy access to the water. You could, with 2 units like that, you could have 8 racks for each, and that's $400 a month for each one. Total $800 could be generated just in those 2 blue squares. The green squares are self-storage units available only to the residents of the city. Those are 8 by 12 in this particular lot size. I went through and checked all the public storage areas here. For climate-controlled storage, it averages $1.50 a square foot. These units are 8 by 12. That would be $144 a month, or $1,728 just for those units. Now, the red area also is could be covered with solar panels, and if they're over a structure like that, you can generate back to the city 90% of its usage. That's what the power company will pay back, as much as 90% of its usage. Now we've got some numbers. Lynn and I went to Solar Source, a company here in Pinellas County with over 25 years experience. They've been kind enough to generate some reports for us, and they're here. Anyhow, it shows, for instance, on each one of them, well, we only have 3, that's right. We've got City Hall, which I asked them to do. 2nd, 16th, and 20 or 25th. They're going to eventually give us all of them. But those solar panels would generate all of the power needed to use climate control in those storage centers, which makes them 30 to 40% more revenue generation, more appealing, and you can get a higher price because they are climate controlled, air conditioned essentially. And all of that would be paid for by the solar panels, plus it would go back to the city and overhead cost generation. So totally, the storage units and the sailing centers would generate $22,528 a month off a property that's currently generating zero. I'd put the cost on the left side to about $7,000 to build a floating dock, $3,000 to, on the water side, picnic tables are about $500 each, and then you've got another $1,000 of landscaping, then $22,000 for the front landscaping, and that's primarily, you'll see a little diagram on the bottom that shows the end view of the storage units with a lot of nice landscaping in front of them to kind of camouflage that whole thing. Then the roof you can see is angled, and you can cover the walkway as well as the storage units, which gives you kind of a plus factor on the solar side. So that's angled a little bit just to optimize the solar panel. So I went through and I did every one of the parks with the exception of Belle Isle, and that's because Belle Isle has so many heavy trees that you couldn't put solar or anything else in there without really cutting down the trees. The others have some trees, but they're typically moved to the outside, or they're maybe cabbage palms or something that are not high value. But, and all of those are laid out, all of those parks are laid out there. But go back to the cover sheet now, because at the top, this is a chart, a spreadsheet that shows the cost of building everything and what it's monthly. Look at the yellow bands. The monthly cost of these parks, each one of them, of putting on all these storage units at a cost of $45 a square foot, and that's verified in this is inside self-storage, and that is a kind of a trade magazine for self-storage. You put that down. And $45 a square foot for climatized control is the high side price. So this sheet uses $45 a square foot to calculate building those units with climatized or air conditioning and the total cost. And then the first yellow band shows the monthly interest on a 15-year mortgage at 4% interest. We actually currently are paying about 3.75. So adding all of the total monthly cost of construction is $3,943.80 down at the bottom. If you go over to the right side of this, the income from each of those units is $15,066, it looks like, a month. It's over 4 times what you're paying out monthly for having built these units. You're receiving over 4 times what it cost you to do that monthly. And over a year, it's $180,792. That doesn't, the chart below that is actually the solar reports that we've gotten so far, and they're very positive. Number one, it pays for all of the climate control use, but here's the numbers, savings over 25 years, just on the 4 that I've gotten reports back from, are $37,900. That's over the 25-year expected lifespan of these units. And the monthly savings and the cost over here for construction, $2,054 a month. If you come over to the monthly savings in the first year, it falls a little short. It's $1,589 initially, but as your utility rates, which they do, go up, you actually end up with monthly savings of around $3,000 by the end of it. So in a year or two, it'll be a positive cash flow just for the construction costs. But what you've saved in increased rent that you can use on the storage units more than makes up any shortfall there. Now, caveat, I don't recommend doing any of this until it's fully approved, if accepted by the residents of this city. It's a major change in the look of those parks and the use of those parks. Some positive, you got sailing centers now, you got picnic tables, you've got some enhancement on the landscaping on the front, making it more attractive, but you're putting storage units in the center. Now, storage units, they're not going to generate any noise. People are going to come and put their stuff in and go home, and it's going to sit there. So it's not like having businesses in them, you know, like shops and things like that. It's strictly storage. It's utilization of the land without a lot of noise. On 16th Street, it was interesting. If you'll turn over to that one. 16th Street is the largest actual park besides Belle Isle. And the storage units are actually 30 foot by 11 foot. That's large enough for an office. And there are 6 of those available, and I am sure that there are probably 6 people who'd like to have an office that live in this city. Most people here are business owners, etc. You could easily rent those for $495 a month and generate $3,000. Again, residents only. The constrictions that you can't be doing like a retail business, it's an office where you do your work. You can't have people coming and going from them. That's a restriction the city currently has. These are strictly offices for use. Also, that particular park is on open water. So instead of paddle boards there, this property, 16th Street and 2nd Street on open water, I recommend that they actually be sailing centers for like sailfish, sunfish type boats, you know, ones that you carry out down to the dock and set them in the water again. We're not talking big things that have to be in a slip or something. These are carryable watercraft, and they could be taken down. And you could get up to 8 of those in that particular one, and it'd be $800 a month. So going back, generates $15,000 a month at about a $4,000 cost, $180,000 plus a year. That's at 100% rental. Need to say that up front. But if you call most storage centers, they're full, or they're running very close to it. They may have 1 or 2 units. It's only 46 storage units to start with, and 12 paddle units. So thinking out of the box, how can we generate money where we're not making money now? There's $180,000 a year potential. In there also is City Hall, and that was interesting in that cost you $2,000 a month to solarize it, and average back over time is $3,159 a month in utility savings and electrical savings costs. I don't know about worn out, so.
I have a question.
Interesting
parking.
idea.
Parking would be on the street, allowed on the street only for taking things in your storage unit and out.
What if you have a boat that you're taking out, or
Your
paddleboard or something?
bicycle or walk. These parks are spread out across the city from one end to the other. They're all within walking distance or certainly bicycle distance. I think we'd want to leave it to that. That also means that it's residents only, which I think is very important to this idea. Any other comments, questions? All right, I'm going to move on to get to the back.
I had a quick question.
Yes, Bill, go ahead.
First of all, I've sat in these meetings and it's probably the most detail I've seen on an idea. Thank you for the work. Those buildings would require some type of insurance, I'm sure. Have you thought about that piece to it, or?
Actually, you want to do two things. You want to put in a security system and some, I don't know that you want to lock them at night because, you know, people may want to access them at night, but they would all be.
More storm damage or something of that nature, if they're city buildings, the city would require, and I'm just looking at the cost on the map there, but that's to be looked at.
Yeah, exactly. Or you could, I don't know how storage units do it, they may require the owner to have insurance on their own
Just
contents.
Yeah.
It's just something to be studied. I was more interested in looking at the cost to build and the revenue you could generate.
It's really
And
creative.
there's enough room in there, certainly, to answer that question.
Thank you.
Clint?
Yeah, great analysis, great analysis. If you wanted to just do, say, one of these as a feasibility study, have you prioritized these? Which one would you target?
16th initially,
Yeah, that's right.
mostly because of its size and its revenue generation. It also has the fewest number of trees. You probably would want to eliminate 25th Street as well because it's got a lot of heavy trees in there. 7th Street, it's already got a boat ramp. You may want to eliminate the paddlecraft on that one, so the power and paddlecraft don't mix. But maybe you could still have the storage units. And certainly it's something you could try one just to see how it goes. Now, the $45 a square foot, also these storage units have gotten so sophisticated that you can actually buy them in kits. Constructed or just delivered or whatever. So once you put the slab down, you could do this in something that is not permanent. You're not doing it in block. They're typically steel paneled, insulated steel paneled buildings that run in this, and so you could, you know, if it's a disaster, take them down. Well, after a trial basis. So it's nothing totally permanent. Anything else? We'll move on. Go to the page that shows the Belle Isle waterfront area. We have looked at this a couple of times in the city over history, and most comment was they didn't want to see a bunch of boats up on poles and, you know, kind of ugly and didn't have good aesthetics for something that had such a beautiful view. Being a boater, having lived on boats, I think boats in the water, especially large yachts or sport fish or something, are beautiful things to see. But my thought here was just to do what I call a wharf along the seawall, 8 foot wide, and run the length of the new seawall with the exception of the first 45 feet, which is fronted by there's rocks in shallow area and the lift stations there, so eliminating that and utilizing the balance of 480 feet and making that as rental spaces for larger boats, averaging 60, I'm saying 50 to 75, averaging 60 foot, something like that, things that can't be put up on a lift. You could, in this case, well, I'll just go ahead and read. The length of it is 525 feet, 45 feet of westernmost end is too shallow for boats or behind the lift station. Usable dock space, 480 feet. The average depth, thank you, Bill, for checking this for me, is 10 foot out from the seawall, or to the south side of the wharf, is between 8 foot at low tide and 12 foot at high tide. That is plenty of depth of water for 60 to 75 foot boats. They typically would not use more than 5 foot. The average boat size is 60 foot with 20 foot clearance for bow and stern equals 80 foot gross length. Number of docking spaces at 80 foot each equals 6 boats averaging 60 foot in length. The average cost per foot to dock in Pinellas County is about $10 a foot or $600 per boat per month. 6 boats would be $3,600 a month in income. Cost to build an 8 foot by 480 foot wharf at $375 per foot is $180. If you finance over 50 years at 4%, that'd be $1,040 a month. The $375 actually came from, I recently had an 8 foot wide by 16 foot dock built, and the cost was worked out to $375 a foot for the 16 foot. So I just used that calculation in figuring the cost of that. So it's a pretty realistic number. Again, $3,600 a month coming in, $1,080 going out. So you got a net of over $2,000–2,500 every month coming in. This I think would probably be the least objectionable. If the city fathers said you got to utilize that, this would be the least objectionable and have a pretty good return on investment. Also, doing it this way, you could put in one small parking area for each of the 6 boats. It would be a whole lot better than having let's say 25 or 30 slips with short boats and then having to come up with a space for all those cars. That would be untenable.
Interesting.
So I also had the idea, since you have a lift station there, you could utilize that if you got with Pinellas County. I think you could work something out with them where you could have a pump out station for the bilge storage or the sanitation on these boats. What do they call that? Brain fog.
I think you're right on pump out, something like that.
Yeah, even recreational vehicles, you have your holding tank, pumping out your holding tank, sanitary holding tank. We could probably set something up there where boats in the city, not just here, maybe have a little finger dock there that they could just tie up to quick enough to come in and pump out, and also have in that first slot a place where a tanker, not the 18-wheel variety, but the short fuel tank trucks that come into the city. You could have fuel day there, maybe Saturday mornings they'd come in and utilize that dock, pump out what they wanted to, and fill their tanks with diesel or whatever, and the city could take cut off the top of both of those numbers, the pumping station and the fuel tanker. Just additional thought there. The next picture is City Hall, and we did ask Solar Source to look at City Hall for savings on electrical usage by installing solar panels. And that is in here, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's this one. Yeah. Okay. These are the 2 others that we have now. There are more coming on those. They'll eventually do the whole city, but that whole entire roof area could be solar paneled and greatly reduce the overhead for the city for electrical use. I have Crossman Park on here, Lynn, because I had talked to you about trying to find out if they are still doing these big flagpole type Wi-Fi, I mean not Wi-Fi, but cellular towers.
Yeah, and I haven't talked to anybody about that.
Okay. At one time, they were, the companies were paying a premium price for letting you install a cell tower. And we're not talking about the ugly kind. These are actually like large flagpoles. You wouldn't know it was a cell tower unless somebody probably told you, but you could use that, you could utilize Crossman Park for if we could get those, and they're still doing that. I thought I had that chart you made up or had that's the marina
Yeah,
that shows the additional docking space.
no, that's that large, this large thing I have.
Oh, okay. We'll hold that up.
Yeah, this was done, I think it was 2002, was previously looked at to go from 19 slips to 38 slips. And this city looked at it, and at the time, I guess, became an issue with this extension here in the waterway. We have reached out to Pinellas County. There's a change in the water navigation department that there's not a supervisor there anymore, so, but we have reached out to them to come and discuss this, actually along with Belle Isle. Because the city, just in speaking of Belle Isle, the city did this a few years ago also. Putting boat slips along Belle Isle, and I think it was a dozen of them at that time. But to Rudy's point, I think this would be more objectionable than what Rudy's proposing. This here, it would give us some opportunity to do some other things here, maybe where someone could come in, or you could fuel there or do something of that nature. But we need to go back to I spoke to Dave Walker probably a year ago. He wasn't too keen on this idea. He was the previous land and water navigation for the county. The idea for Belle Isle, he thought it could work, but then it just kind of died. So
With that one on the marina, Lynn, am I looking at that correct, that that is the farthest south point of the marina where it starts to come out?
let's see, it would be no.
No, it's the opposite, it's the
Opposite.
farthest north.
Yeah,
Which actually is the smallest point, like if they're going to their condos in the back of,
right.
that's a really tight squeeze if you start adding in there. I think that's where we had slip one at one time, and I don't know, some of the lines were.
Well, at the time, we met the 25% requirement for the
Okay.
waterway. This was done by Woods Consulting, and I want to say a year ago, because I think we talked about it at council. I went back to Woods and got some prices for doing the design, and it was in the $20,000 to $30,000 range.
Was there ever a look at a T coming out in the middle where you could go out further, or didn't it make sense?
When they did the design, I don't know that this was the concept they came up with when they did this, but this is from 2002.
Yeah. Cool.
So, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about now was researched over the years by, previous councils, and for whatever reason, they didn't do it. Could have been money, could have been, the feedback we got from, someone, the county. or what
This
have
is
you.
interesting. Excuse me, do you mind if I add some to this?
Sure.
Because I live down there and I hear all the perspectives of this whole Belle Isle and this Howard. And I think everyone when you purchase a home, you feel as if you purchased it with that view.
Mhm.
So if you're in your backyard on Howard
Mhm.
and you're looking across, it's like, whoa, wait a minute now. What are you doing? You're bringing boats in and out,
Mhm.
you're putting fences up, you're building docks that are gonna come close to us. That's not what we bought.
Mhm.
And I think there was some of that, and then there was some of this, wow, what are you doing? You're turning this whole aisle into a traffic lane all day, and you got people late at night. But your idea is interesting. I find it really interesting, especially if you did something where the dock came off the seawall and wasn't parallel to the seawall, and you only maybe had 2 entrance ramps that aesthetically were, because you would want a fence, and instead of putting a fence all along Belle Isle,
Mhm.
maybe just those 2, because I'm picturing what you drew as something that's floating, because those, you don't want, I don't think you were thinking lifts and a dock that each person had their own pilings and lifts like the marina now.
Right.
So that's really interesting thought aesthetically. Now, do we have people that have 50 to 70 foot boats in the area? Maybe, maybe not.
I've got one in my backyard, and the aesthetics are, just like you said, you know, you think Monaco or whatever, the guy's got a mega yacht parked in my.
Is that on your left?
And he has
Now
added
your
value
view?
to my lot.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think this is really a great plan, is the way I see it. You know, you tie up mega yachts there, you don't destroy the promenade there. The
Right.
palm trees stay, you minimize the
Right, and the
parking
way you do
impact.
that, Glenn, is they have these things down in Indian Rocks on the Narrows. There's a couple of docks down there. I never thought of this till I'm looking at this picture going, wow, that is really pretty. And a lot of us live out here for that reason. But they just have a 1 dock gate that goes out on each side aesthetically, so someone can't climb onto that. But it's not a fence all along the Indian Rocks Narrows. And you just have maybe 2 of those floating ramps that go down, and then you have a ramp or a dock that comes all the way out, floating, but it's 10 to 15 feet off the seawall.
Oh, okay.
That's probably, instead of building it right up to the wall, and again, I'm just thinking of what all the objections would be.
That's your
That's
security.
really cool stuff you brought to the table, thank you.
That's your, yeah, well, you've enhanced it with that view of moving it off the wall. That gives you a security factor. Nobody can jump on these other boats without going through the 2 security gates,
Yeah,
which minimizes having to put
fence all the way
fence
down.
all the way down that sidewalk, yeah. Yeah, great.
thanks.
And then the last thing, this was a project that was done in 2012. It was a feasibility study for the marina for the park. It was done by a landscape architect. And what, basically, it's given us the 70 spaces that we have to have for beach renourishment. There's some places there that we could do some adjustments to. We did do, the vice mayor and I kind of went through some scenarios where we could adjust. So, in picking up some space, so we're kind of in the range, I think it was 100.
Yeah, obviously the minimum 70, because they
Right.
picked it up there.
And these are 10-foot spaces. So if you went to 9-foot spaces, you'd pick up probably 10. And there's some areas there, landscaping, that you could do away with. This area in the middle of it, though, if you made this a paid parking lot, you're gonna have to do that because that's a SWIP requirement. You'll have to have a retention.
Now-
Maybe not a pond, but
Now, it's interesting because if you, this afternoon I went back and read the report. And if you look at page 12, it discusses the parking areas. And one option they throw out there is if you were to put in crushed concrete or some non-impervious surface,
different story.
you do away with the retention pond. So guess
Right.
what? All of a sudden, the parking expands there.
Yeah, but this design is done on, just to clarify, it's done on paved parking.
And that's why it minimizes the number of spaces,
Right.
which tends to push you back into the marina area. And just like Lynn said, you know, he dusts off the old plans there. And if you optimize the north end, which is the really tight end, for a fuel bowser and maybe a bait shop or something, you may be able to create a revenue stream, who knows?
Yeah, because you're opening this
Yeah,
area.
exactly.
So,
There's some opportunities there.
but we still are trying to schedule a meeting with the water navigation. I've spoken to the person that's temporary, and he told me he would be getting back to us.
So this changeover in management there slowed them down.
Yeah, yeah, because they haven't, no one came in to replace that person.
Glenn, did you want to?
You know, we discussed it earlier, and so it seemed like, okay, I threw some numbers down on the paper just to give you some ideas. Obviously, Brenda, I think you were talking about the utilization of this building. So, I mean, how much is it really being utilized? Well, I didn't crunch the numbers so much on the office side, because obviously there's gonna be high utilization on that side. But if you look at the community meeting side of it, I mean, it's fully, 60% of this entire building. And you can, if you look at the bottom portion, I just kind of approximated the utilization for the various activities that go here. And you can see that the utilization of 60% of this building is in the 25 to 30% range. So even if we kept a portion of this building for offices and the services we provide to the community, you could possibly open up 60% of this building for leasing out or other office spaces or some other. I don't know, all I did was throw some numbers down to say, okay, you know, how much are we really using this building? And I think we've all had kind of that hair on the back of our neck saying, well, you know, something's not right here. We're not utilizing this building to its full potential. Well, there's some numbers to kind of back up
Yeah.
the thinking behind that.
Well, I remember we had some discussion too about finding someone who could look at this building in terms of utilization and come up with ideas on beyond what we thought about of how it could be used.
Well,
Any thoughts on where we would find that person?
I talked to a commercial realtor. Of course, he basically gave me what the value of the building was, you know, and he pegged it at $5 million on the low side. If that property along the water was included in it, then it would probably incrementally go up, but that's a separate animal, that parkland, and we'd have to do some more research on. Would we be able to buy it back? Would we be able to do anything with it? Because it was bought with some state funds. Florida Communities Trust Environmental Lands Division is how it was purchased. Because even the commercial realtor said they would probably tear this building down and want to build condos because there's more value than this building. He did tell me that office space was not, how do you call it, premium at the current time. So I guess in essence, you got to kind of look at, well, do you just want to get rid of the building and let somebody come in and try to develop it? But we still got the issue with the waterfront. And do you give all this land away that's around it, which is part of, you know, this building? So that's a theory that's got to be, I think, dug into a little more. You know, I had a thought, and you know, everybody keeps talking about moving people over to the little house. Well, you would move the people over to the little house and the console would be in the garage. So I'm just gonna give you the scenario the way
Which
it
we
was.
did first.
That's what we did. And it was like a can of sardines for the employees at the time. Because there's limitations on what you could do there. I mean, we tore out a normal home bathroom to make it ADA accessible, because it had to be. And there's 2 bedrooms in that place, and I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah,
So, you know, it's very limited. We had, Patty was in there. We had 2 people in one office and 1 person in 1 bedroom. And then in the front, you know, of course, and I don't know how long you've lived here, but I know that city hall was, using that as a city hall was very, how do I say it? Compact. Plus, we had didn't we have a storage unit that set out back?
Huge mobile mini, yeah.
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 I couldn't remember that, but, so.
Didn't represent the premier city of Bel Air Beach.
No, it did, and the other thing you gotta look at here, you know, I know the finance committee's talking about this, paying off this loan. Well, we've got 5 years to pay this loan off, okay? If we took $1 million, and I told this to him last night, that to pay this loan off out of our money, just looking at the building, nothing else, because of the penalty, the prepayment penalty, we'd be giving away interest that we could earn on that $1 million to the tune of $60,000 to $80,000 over that 5 years, because we wouldn't have that money and we wouldn't be able to invest it. And we'd still, to get back to that, we'd have to put $200,000 to get it back. So, you know, in looking at that, trying to sell off, because, and then they talked about refinancing the building, okay, and doing a bigger loan. Well, yeah, you could still pay that same payment, but if you do a bigger loan, you got another 10 or 15 years of paying it off. So, you know, I'm kind of like, I don't know if this works. The numbers don't work. And in 5 years, technically speaking, you're going to have that $200,000 we've been paying in principal and interest going back into the budget.
Boom.
You know, so there's a $200,000 cash inflow to the budget in 5 years. So what is the trade-off? The other option I thought about was, we'll take this room and we'll build a wall and we'll make this the council chambers, okay? And redo something with the entrance. And then, you know, if we want to rent that out to somebody that wants to rent it for offices, let them rent it and build it themselves and forget about you know, rentals and weddings, just forget about that stuff. Because, you know, it's a market, yeah, we have a lot of people that come and look at the building, but maybe it just doesn't fit their needs.
What if that was rented out? I just ballparkly, I'm real curious. What if that was rented out, like every weekend, something? Has anyone ever looked at that? What is that number?
Well, I can tell you that, you know, if we rent it, it's $1,700.
So over a year, about 17 grand?
Well, I know, but you've budgeted for
Yeah,
rentals 17,000 over the next year.
Right.
That's what your projected
Right, so-
revenue is.
I vision that view out there. If that's something you were thinking, please incorporate this in your discussions and meetings. That would be the ideal gym for the residents of Bel Air Beach. And do you know how many people would pay 25, 30 bucks a month? 50 for that matter, for a household to come use a beautiful gym. I guarantee you it would generate more than 30 grand if you had X number of people. You can do the math backwards. And it probably wouldn't be a big cost. Just,
well,
I was
I
just
mean,
curious.
that's just throwing something out that you say, okay, if this is, because trying to, you know, I've had people come to me and talk to me about trying to rent like 2 offices in the back of the building. Well, how are they gonna get there? That's the first problem. Who's gonna be their receptionist, which we you know, the city staff shouldn't be the receptionist for somebody that's renting a space, typically. And right now, we only have 5 people plus myself, so that's, well, actually, we only have 3 people plus myself internally. The other 2 are outside employees.
If this building was sold, there's a discussion of selling the building, the property and all that, what it's worth, where would the city hall go?
Well, that's an issue. You're gonna have to build another one,
Did you have to build another building?
because that, and you still gotta have your space for your maintenance, regardless of the tune. I mean, the value of that property over there is about 300,000, according to the realtor, and if you look, because it's a tear-down house. The garage in the back would have to be torn down also, because if it became a residential situation, it wouldn't meet our code, because you can't have a detached structure. So, that has some concerns. And to build another maintenance facility, you get 300,000 for that? It's gonna cost you 300,000 to build another maintenance facility.
And what happens in 15 or 20 years? Do you
That's right.
Tear it down and build a new building? What is the financial problem that we're trying to solve here? I mean, is it that, I mean,
Well,
is it,
I think it's starting to become a red herring, you know? Yeah, we've complained about, hey, it costs us $16,000 a month to pay for this. Hey, it's paid off in 5 years, and I think you're starting to really cook now, because I think maybe if we repurpose some of this stuff, if you look at the lobby and the corridor, that's 10% of this building. If you look at just the dais in the council chamber, that's 6% of this building. So I think, I'm not a fan of selling our property. Who knows what the future is, but I think there's better ways of maybe using it. I agree with you. I think moving across the street may not be the optimal solution, but I think you're onto something by saying, I don't think we utilize this space as well as we can. You know, I think there's a lot of, yeah, maybe the offices are 100% usage, but there's a lot of other areas that probably aren't 100. You could combine offices or whatever. If you looked at the government standards for designing office spaces, this way exceeds what the federal government is would pay for office spaces like that. But, yeah, I think you guys are really starting to cook with some of these ideas.
So,
well, my question goes to what is citywide? What is the financial problem that we're trying to resolve? I mean,
Well, I think.
how much of it, to be solvent, how much of an increase in the rental, or not the rent, the tax base are we talking about? Is this a critical, because we're talking about changing the complexion of the community, and how big is the problem?
Well, let's, you know, the sky isn't falling, and that's part of the problem. Some of these comments that have been made, the sky is falling, and guess what? We're gonna collapse on you tomorrow. That's not true. We're looking at some other things that, and this is how I look at it. Okay, as an example, our budget shortfall, and I'm gonna use last year, was 300,000. But we were able to do some consolidation, and, you know, the staff worked very hard at maintaining expenses. Well, we gave that 300,000 back. So it was basically, we didn't need to use that reserve. This year it's 400,000, and it's based on some stormwater projects. Well, along the way, if you look at, okay, our burn rate on our reserves today, if we kept our millage rate at the same time, we'd be a year short of paying this building off. That's kind of where we're at on our burn rate. The other thing that we gotta look at is if we were doing a study to do a stormwater fee, because that's our biggest infrastructure problem right now, okay? If we implement that in a year, then that's gonna put some more money back into the reserves for the stormwater program, because that fee can only be used for stormwater. So if, in the crystal ball idea, if 5 years from now this building was paid off we had a stormwater fee, and maybe we had incremental increase in the taxes. And I'm not talking, you know, a mill, I'm talking, you know, maybe 2/10 of a mill or something, okay? I don't think the sky is falling, would be holding as much water as people may think.
Might as well add one little revenue stream in there that totals 50 grand too on top of it. From all these wonderful ideas and discussions.
Right.
I thank you for some clarity. That was a great question, and I think
Another way of thinking of
there's
this.
a little too much talk about the sky is falling.
Yeah, we don't have solvency issues here. It's just, another way of thinking of this is, what should Bel Air Beach look like 5 years from now? Here's my idea or vision of Bel Air Beach. Underground utilities, paved streets, brand new paved streets, no problems with the valley curbs. I don't expect to walk down the neighborhood and see patches in the road and cracked valley curbs. All new street lights. I mean, that's what Bel Air Beach should look like. We should have a nice city hall so that when you drive in Bel Air Beach, you say, this is a different place. You drive down Gulf Boulevard, there's no wires hanging across, no old poles leaning. I drive into some of the residential areas, beautiful streets, no wires, nice street lights, valley curves. That's what it should look like. So the question is how do we get there in 5 years? Well, with the current situation, there's not a high probability we're going to look like that in 5 to 10 years. But if we start getting smart about creating revenue streams and reducing expenditures and maybe utilizing the property we do have in a smarter way, then maybe it can look that way in 5 to 10 years. I just think of it from the reverse side instead of, hey, we don't have a solvency issue here. No, I think we're being managed as frugally and as well as we can given the circumstances, but can we do business smarter? And I think he's working that way. So.
Why do you pick 5 years? I'm just kind of curious.
Because I'm throwing it out there. What's your idea? I mean,
Yeah, I think
2
we
years,
I think
20
it goes
years?
back to the priorities. So if certain areas of infrastructure, I mean, you're hearing someone who's on top of it, has a vision of, man, this really is priority and this has to come out of reserves and if we can stretch it a little bit to get to 5 years, we're gonna be okay. Find an incremental revenue stream in the interim, maybe 2 or 3, and these are great ideas. But don't get me wrong, I was kind of curious if there was something you
No.
saw as
No,
this is the
there's-
number.
I have a
Because I love your
tendency.
vision
No, I have a tendency to set what's called a stretch goal.
and work it back.
Because 5 years, probably not likely, it'll probably be 10 years, but I'm gonna say 5 years so that we start now and we start at a pace and there's nothing wrong with saying, look, we're not gonna get there in 5 years, it might be 8, might be 10, but you gotta start somewhere, that's all I'm saying.
And
But
then,
I see some sacrifice here. We're talking about better paving in the street, underground utilities, and all of that. That is wonderful, but now we're talking about adding on-the-street parking, or close to on-the-street parking, going down Belleye, have all these cars parked along Belleye. That's not gonna look pretty. We may have on-the-street parking, but now we've got, you run by these parks that today are nice, pretty parks, some of them have benches. Even though the dogs use them a lot, there are some people that, but even driving by, they look pretty nice. So we're gonna have some sheds there with something over it, and people bring their kayaks in and out. I don't know that we've actually done anything to improve the living standards of the beach, to tell you the truth.
That's well taken point.
I think that's why Mr. Davis would throw in the caveat that these are ideas, they're not recommendations, but when you're
Well, you got
called on
all the
board
sides
to
of
bring
it, right?
ideas to the table, and I tip my hat as an observant of all these committees, is everyone's doing what they're asked.
Right.
And it comes back to council, what is the priority? Redo City Hall, get to that 5-year point, find 1 or 2 ways to make some extra income, we can do that. But I think, and I don't disagree with you, Tom, those are all, I think I said that in a meeting before. With everything good comes something on the other side you're giving up. But I'm glad you brought up the finance side, because it sounds good right now on paper and just, well, here we go, sign it here on the dotted line. We're paying for all the infrastructure right now, but we're looking out 20 years. And really, if you paint a picture of 4.5, 5 years, we can get there. Am I wrong on that thinking?
I think we can get there. I mean, and that's just me speaking as a resident. I mean, I've
Sure.
been here
In
22
agreement.
years, and I've seen, I've been through a lot of this. And I think that, to some degree, the people, like I said, they think the sky is falling and it's not. And we've got some other opportunities that we can do. I think people, for the most part, we've been spoiled with our millage rate. I'm gonna be honest with you, we have. We're one of the lowest in the county. Go right across the bridge to Bel Air. Their millage rate's 5.82. Okay, what would 5.82 bring us? We could put everything underground and pave it.
Dad, I don't agree with that argument because our assessed values in here
Right,
are
right.
so much higher than across the bridge. So if we applied that millage rate to us, we'd be paying skyrocketing,
Well, I'm talking Bel Air where there's some big houses.
Yeah, but
Not-
the millage rate isn't the apples to apples.
No.
It's the taxes paid is the apples.
now
to
what's the
no.
millage rate over in Bel Air Shore?
0.0,
Yeah,
Six
because
or
of
something.
the assessed value of the homes. Yeah.
Over time, it's okay for it to go up.
well, no, I'm not saying to raise it to 5.82,
No,
I'm
no.
just using it as an example.
But to stay solvent right now, the millage rate doesn't, I don't know, with me, I think, what would my taxes, in percentage, I pay a certain amount of money in taxes. What's the percentage increase? 1%, 2% to stay solvent? 3%? 5%?
Well, we'd have to do some studies, but something that.
Well, I think that's important, I mean,
People don't understand too. They think that everything you pay in taxes is pays to the city of Bel Air Beach. That is incorrect.
right,
The average homeowner pays a little over 12% to the city of Bel Air Beach of your taxes.
right.
The other 87.5% is for school, Swift Mud, the county, juvenile welfare board, whatever else they tack on to
I
it.
feel like I'm stealing when you say it that way.
So even if the city taxes went up 5 or 10%, overall, because of all the other things that are laid on top of it, you only see maybe a 1 or 2% increase in your tax rate.
That's probably true.
So
I think we should probably visit that as, what problem are we solving?
Absolutely true, Tom. That part of this whole process, on the ballot side, okay, you can give up all this, your parks, your view at Belle Isle, whatever, and not have to pay any increase in taxes, or you could forget all that and pay this amount more in taxes and have what you have now, plus, what we need in
Everybody's
infrastructure.
value, everybody's homes have gone up,
Yeah, is that in part of the process?
and that's,
Or you do something in between, right? I mean,
Right.
at one end, you've got do nothing, and the other end, you've got increased millage rates or sell off properties, or there's something in
in the
between.
middle, right?
Yeah.
Don't do any damage,
Drastic.
basically,
First, do no harm, right?
exactly.
Is the finance committee, one of their projects is doing that? What is the number, if we don't do anything else, what is the number that we would have to use, generate in taxes?
No, the biggest concern that we had to educate them on is they thought we had a number in mind saying, we want to come up with increasing revenues this much. No, if you come up with an extra $50,000 a year, that's $50,000 we didn't have, it could be applied to something else. And some of these projects may produce the seed money to finance or start another project. So, I mean, take a little here, take a little here. I'm not saying we just do everything on this side or on this side. Let's pick and choose and be smart.
So I'm curious as we're on that subject, like when I look at just a picture like this, when would this picture have been taken, do you think? 2000 maybe?
I think there's a date on
Oh, there is?
it, isn't there?
It's 2015, isn't it? That?
Yeah, this is 2015.
Wow, no way. That can't be. That can't be. Yeah, I had, oh, maybe it is. Huh. Was all this empty? So this house on the corner, I thought it was the big orange house. This house is gone. So this has changed, and the reason why I'm bringing that up, I was just kind of curious on just the natural growth of what I'm seeing. You can go over to Harrison. Wow, it went from like 1950s, 70 homes, somewhere in there, to beautiful 3-story with their, just by the nature of how we're building differently is increasing our revenues. Am I wrong on when I think, like some of these homes on Howard?
Well, as an
They're-
example, this year with the value,
What is it,
this year,
60 grand or
we
something?
got like 40,
That's it?
46,000, I think,
Wow.
leaving the millage rate as it was.
Yeah,
We went from 544 million to 566 in that range, is assessed valuation. So we picked up, and we did I don't have it with me, but we did a formula. If you raise the millage rate this much, you collect this much extra. If you raised it to the point where, I think we had it expanded out, and I'll have to dig that out. Last year, we had it expanded out to where if you raised the millage, which would require a super majority of the council to raise it to that level, you would be able to pay for a stormwater project every year. It was,
You're lulled into this sense by the millage rate is frozen, we're not increasing taxes. Well, if we're experiencing a 2 to 4% increase in the assessed value of your home every year, guess what? What do you think's happening to your taxes being paid? Millage rate is staying constant, but guess what? You're paying 2 to 4% more in your taxes every year.
yeah, I was kind of thinking of actually the home itself over time. I've watched some streets in a 10-year period, they just are completely different. And the size of the homes, which I thought would be generating more revenue just by the nature of their size and value, would help the city. But I think you're all on the right path with incrementally over time, 5-10 years, whether it's the millage rate or it's your revenue stream from here. But I like where you're going with not changing the entire, I know when I moved here, it was marinas, parks, beach access. The beauty of it is why I moved here. I just would hate to see that go, and it's just a bunch of beautiful homes with nice streets.
So now that's one of the benefits of going to, for instance, the stormwater fee system.
Yeah, I
Because
agree with
it's
that.
based on everybody gets an equal benefit and there's a equitable portioning. If you improve your home and your assessed value goes up, why should you pay more for improvements to stormwater or flooding in a different part of the city just because you improved your home?
Yeah.
Well, stormwater fees kind of levels the playing field for everybody.
yeah.
I agree with that.
Because you stay, and we're gonna be starting that process, the evaluation of what that fee is here, very shortly, actually. We've got a couple estimates. I know Glenn and I ran some numbers with some spreadsheets that he had created, and we put some numbers in and plugged some things, and we looked at condos paying a lesser fee because they're a different animal, because they would, and as opposed to residential, and we used $10. And
Yeah,
we
there's-
were gonna get about 120.
Yeah, there's two different ways. You can either say, hey, we
That
want
is
to
awesome.
generate a
I don't know
$150,000.
why that wouldn't get approved. Is it council or is that the citizens?
No, it's a process like
Okay.
the undergrounding above you in States Island. You cannot just go say, okay, Rudy, I'm gonna charge you $20 a month for
Good, I'm
stormwater.
glad you can't do that.
You have to, there's an evaluation process, and you gotta make it so it's a level playing field, kinda like they did with the assessment on the undergrounding. And that takes an engineering firm and a legal firm to put the stuff together to make that happen. The council can approve it, but we have to go through a process because we don't wanna be, I guess, how I look at it from a safety point, I wouldn't wanna go tell somebody, Rudy, today it's $20 a month, and 5 years from now, Rudy says, well, you just told me it was $20 a month, and I want all my money back all of a sudden. No, we wanna make sure we do it with the process like we did with the undergrounding
So
assessment.
that in itself could take maybe a year to do.
No, 6 months.
And then by having that implemented, we've just bought ourselves some time on this timeline, which actually brings us potentially to the city hall being paid off. Am I right?
We'll be close. It
close?
really, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on a lot of things. As an example, we had a project on 3rd through 6th Street this year, okay, stormwater project. The estimate, the bid was $329,000. We ended up spending about $270,000. But that's because we're watching those contractors to make sure they tell us, oh, I did this. No, you didn't do that, so you're not getting paid for it. So, and we've been able to do that with pretty much every project. We haven't had a budgeted item go over its estimate in the last, I can say honestly, the last 3 years. Bell Isle seawall, I think it was budgeted like $350. It ended up costing us, and I think, no, it was $330, and it ended up costing us $299 or something like that. So, you know, we've been very on top of making sure, because, you know, if you tell a contractor I got $500,000, they'll spend it for you.
Of course. Can you educate me on what the stormwater problem is?
Most of our stormwater problem is high
High
tide,
tide.
sunny day flooding. That's our major problem. So, and you gotta understand, our piping infrastructure is 70 years old. It's just life, went past its lifespan. So where we can, we're replacing that pipe, enlarging it to have some more capacity. So if we have a sunny day or a rainy day high tide, at least we've got a little more storage capacity. And that's been our biggest problem, is the winds kick up, high tide comes in, guess what? Water in the streets, you know? People have to realize, and some people I don't think do realize that you live on an island, and if it rains 3 inches in an hour, I don't care what kind of prevention you got, guess what? There's water in the street. On some streets, not every street. We pretty much got the first 6 streets down here done. We did a couple check valves on 12th and 13th, and Belle Isle, and you know, so, but it's not going to prevent everything. It's not meant to. You know, everybody talks about.
I'm gonna take you one of these times so you don't have to keep telling everyone this. Hold on, here's the Lynn infrastructure story. Play.
Yeah, so you know, it's just a matter of things, like, we're not gonna go between 2 houses and take the pipe out. I'm gonna tell you that right now, that would be a disaster in the waiting. If I went between Bill's house and his neighbor, part of his house might fall in, I don't know, it's just, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't even suggest it. But there's ways to, you know, if the pipe's cracking or something, we can slip line those, which means we'll get some more longevity, slip lining them. Basically, it's putting a pipe within a pipe, and it's minimalistic in inches that you're reducing the capacity. But he's got a pipe out in the street, well, I'm gonna dig that street up, and I'm gonna make the pipe bigger. Right now, it might be 15 inches, I'm gonna make it 24. And then put new catch basins in, which will eliminate some of the clogging that we get, because our current catch basins are curb catch basins, which basically is a hole in the side of the street, which I think everybody knows that, and it's got this concrete top on it. Well, we're gonna put a grate top on it, there's gonna be no concrete. It prevents a lot of stuff. Like when we had the hurricane as an example, we had to go around and pull a lot of stuff out of the storm drains. because it blew down in there. Well, this will prevent a lot of that. And the check valves will prevent the backflow on, when it's high tide day. And that's what we're trying to do.
Lynn's done a great job. He's prioritized the flooding situation. And he categorized it as, hey, personal property is damaged is a priority one that he's attacking right away. The second criticality is a street floods and becomes impassable, or you've got standing water for a certain period of time. So maybe the desired state we're trying to get to is nobody's property is damaged during one of these flooding events. There's no flooding streets that are impassable, and we only have standing water. You know, we're going to have a situation where it rains hard, we're going to have some standing water, but in 6 to 12 hours the water's gone and the street is still passable. So that's how he's attacking this stuff and prioritizing.
I like that you're adding this to the discussion because it is a variable to get to this 5-year. Do we get some relief? The city hall paid off. In that time, did we reconstruct this, create another revenue stream somewhere else?
And the expansion joint in all of this is the capital improvement plan. So how fast you attack these projects, how much they cost, that changes the burn rate of our reserves. So that's you know, it's just, there's a lot of inputs to this equation, and that's just one of them. So he's juggling like 12 balls in the air at one time. He's doing a pretty good job.
Great.
All right, I'd like one quick question. Do we know if there are any load-bearing walls in this building, or is the roof self-supportive?
I'd have to look at the plans from there and find that out.
Picture of that.
But
I
I think it'd be good.
I don't think, you know, just in the concept I was throwing out, I don't think we would have any issues with, basically what I was saying is, create this as a console chamber
Mhm,
and maybe go straight back, and
mhm,
if we could take that wall out.
mhm.
It's not like we have 100,000 people come to a council meeting.
Right,
In most cases, it's less than a dozen in most cases, And if we get to a point that we need more space, then, you know, we could create a situation where we use the lobby, you know?
right.
I mean, we didn't have the space in the garage, and what we did at that time was we opened the garage doors and people had to sit out in the driveway.
Driveway.
I don't know if any of you.
Old-fashioned meeting.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you experienced that, but, you know,
Maybe we could have a drive-in theater type of atmosphere where you pull up in the parking lot, bring your popcorn, catch your mic.
put a video right on the outside of the building, you know, so, yeah. So, you know, there's ways to do that. I mean, we talk about rental and space, you know, I did a little survey on city halls. Most city halls don't even rent anything in the area.
You pick up an extra 30 grand, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go back to this gym
Yeah.
idea, cause you get 75 people paying $35 to go into a gym, there's 30 extra thousand there, and that's a low number.
Right, and that's kind of what I'm saying. There may be a way to repurpose that side, and we just get out of rentals altogether and let somebody rebuild it in something else, you know, as opposed to, you know, we can reconfigure the public being able to come to City Hall, I think.
Ron was put them through that back door to make the counter.
Well, even here in the hallway, there's a way to do that. There's a room that we could do something. Everybody keeps talking about security. Okay, well, we'll be a bank window if that's what we need to be,
Right.
you know.
All right, I'd like to start looking at the objectives for the set time for the next meeting and the objectives that we look at between now and then. March 18th, 3 p.m. Does that work for everyone?
Oh, something going on. Yeah. I have a calendar on this. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
if
you
I've
mean-
got anything on.
You mean your schedule calendar? Okay.
We'll look at it.
Okay, so we'll set it tentatively as March 18th at 3 PM. If we need to move it, we'll do so. Let's talk about a few things that we're gonna think about between now and then. I think just overall continue to think about utilization of the property as we have been doing. But two things I'd like to find is, I've written down professional building utilization optimizer for City Hall. Is there such a person out there, and is that service available, or who is that kind of person? Can we get
Yeah,
some
I'll
thoughts
see if
and-
I can find out.
Yeah, ask around, if you know somebody that's kind of in the real estate area who's maybe knows someone, or you can have that conversation with. How do we find somebody who can look at our property and tell us how best to maximize its utilization, given today's popularity of various things?
For building.
This, Rudy,
That's
this is
commercial
LoopNet.
real estate.
LoopNet is a commercial real estate site,
LoopNet?
national, and they have it here. So people looking for office space or commercial space, LoopNet dot, yeah.
What's it called?
LoopNet,
Lube.
Loop, L-O-O-P,
Oh, LoopNet.
yeah, .com, okay?
Okay,
That's where most people advertise, I think.
I'm actually also maybe thinking of somebody on the architectural side,
Yeah,
Yeah.
some people come in and don't they do
Here's-
their own design?
yeah.
Yeah, they
give them the
rebuild,
space and they
if you give them
rebuild
a
it.
space, they'll build it out
Yeah,
themselves.
they build it up themselves,
Yeah, you don't
All right,
let them,
you know.
if you said, okay, I'm gonna give you all the space here for rent for X amount of dollars, you build it out yourself.
For so many years.
Yeah.
and we'll continue marina optimization via discussions with water and navigation. They've got to come to the party because they've got to say first what you can and can't do, and then from there you go on. But so soon Lynn will take the lead on getting those people, they're county people, so they want to talk to officials. Anyone else have an idea of something that we could cover or take a look at?
I suggested once before the cross-pollination with the finance guys.
Yeah.
They've got a meeting on the 10th of March at 4 PM, and I don't know if you guys want to sit in on that one or have them, invite them to yours, but, you know, you guys are talking similarities in some areas.
Mm-hmm.
Just sit in.
Okay, what's the date?
I'm sorry, March 10th at 4 PM is the finance committee,
Okay,
and I can pass the word to Rich Shock if you guys are meeting on the 18th.
all right. Sunshine law and violations of talking with them outside of a public meeting, is that an issue? Somebody on
They're
another
not.
committee?
They're not on, no, you're not on the same committee, it wouldn't be anything coming to vote, I don't think.
What if it was a council member and something they were gonna vote on? Is there?
If it was a
anything-
council member, different story, but I'm talking,
I don't think we're voting on anything, we're just.
No.
No, not this committee, but interacting with the other committee. Who's on that one? I don't remember.
there's no council
No
member.
council then, yeah.
Okay,
We're just sort of self-educating ourselves, right, at
Yeah.
this point in time.
okay.
Yeah, because it's two different committees, it's just the interchange committee you can't.
All right. Anything else? All right, I think we've had some meaningful discussions today. Appreciate everyone's input. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
Second. Meeting's adjourned.